Power on.
You know, Ellen, did we ever decide on a name for this podcast series yet? I know we talked about it at the end of the last one.
I think we were going to stick with Dinner and a Movie with Brian and Ellen.
Right. Okay. Well, we might not get the dinner in this one yet, but in future entries, we're going to make that happen.
We're going to make delicious food and share it with you.
Yeah, and you get to hear us eat it all and whatever else. But we do have some nice teas here, and then I think we'll be in, not teas as in a tease, like a cock tease or something like that, but teas as in like drinks.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Right. So we have some of that, so we'll be drinking that if you hear that in between all this. But it's meant to be very, very conversational review of, well, honestly, it's going to end up being some of the greatest or maybe the worst movies ever made. Speaking of worst movies ever made, we have a review of one of those coming up, but then also we have a review of another one of those coming up, because holy hell, you actually watched Battlefield Earth with me.
I can't wait to review that one.
That's not what we're reviewing here. We're actually going to review a very good movie, in my opinion. But, yeah, we'll get into that. But after this one, we're going to review another horrible movie, which will, well, all right, I guess I'm kind of letting the cat out of the bag. But we'll be doing the sequel to Batman Forever. That's all I'm going to say right now.
Well, we have been doing this whole Batman series.
Yeah. So we went to theaters. And if you're wondering about my voice, you know, this is the life of a podcaster. Sometimes your voice gets a little hoarse or something. And, you know, what are you going to do? So anyway, Ellen, thankfully, is here to help me with all of this. But
Of course.
Of course. Yeah. So for the 80th anniversary of Batman and the 30th anniversary of the release of the first Tim Burton Batman movie, they have been releasing all 4 of the original Batman quadrilogy movies in theaters, and they put in all 4. I have yet to see the numbers of what these re-releases have done in theaters. I'd be interested to see those, particularly for the last movie in this series, but for Batman Forever, I'm also curious how that did, because a lot of people don't realize that Batman Forever was one of the biggest movies of its day. This came out in 1995, and not long after Jurassic Park, which was a huge movie. I mean, just a massive, massive movie. And,
in more ways than one.
Yeah, right. I mean, look at the size of those brachiosaurs. It's amazing. But in 95, this was the biggest opening. To that point, Batman Forever had the biggest opening weekend in history at something like 52.8 million. I mean, now you hear opening weekends of, 200 million or something. It's some stupid number. But this was huge, and it was the only movie to beat Jurassic Park at this time. It was a major event. It did crazy money overall, to a not so impressive budget compared to the previous 2 films, because Batman Returns would run into certain troubles. But Batman Forever, I mean, this was a whole new lease on life for the Caped Crusader in a very real way, when people thought, oh shit, this is all screwed after Batman Returns. We would see Tim Burton as in the producer role, but really wouldn't do much else. They would just kind of give him the title. This is a film where Warner Brothers went to a guy, Joel Schumacher, who's a tremendous director, frankly, who did Lost Boys, a bunch of other movies. And they said, you need to lighten this up. You need to make this family friendly. Take over and do this with Batman Forever. I guess I'll ask, opening this up with you, Ellen, how did you feel about the tone of this movie in comparison to Batman, the 89 Batman, and Batman Returns?
So I felt like the previous Batman movie that we saw with the Penguin, that was more of like a demented carnival, like heavy emphasis on the demented.
Yeah.
But this one was more of a festival feeling. It was very fun and upbeat. I mean, you could tell there was like a lot of fun being had in the production of this film. And it was, I mean, you say kid-friendly, like I could totally see that. Not that there aren't dark elements to the film, there certainly are, but it's more focused on the fun, colorful, like circus aspect of Batman.
It feels, let me know if you agree with this, it feels very 90s. Like, there's neon everywhere. I mean, and the color, in fact, I call this the color of the 90s. Puke green or toxic green.
Oh, yeah.
There's just this green all over the fucking place, which makes sense based upon one of the villains in the movie. But, yeah, I mean, that's all. It's kind of dark, but it does feel very bright at the same time with all of the neon and all of this different shit. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, there are scenes where, like, it's taking place at night in an alleyway, but there's a black light, and it's really making these neon colors pop.
Yeah, unlike this paint that these gang members have on them.
Right.
It makes them look like hot pink and orange and all this other neon stuff, yeah.
Yeah, or like even when they go to the circus in the film, it's very colorful.
Right.
Even the villains' layers are super colorful.
Yeah, so it really stands out in contrast to what you saw in the first two films.
Oh yeah, this is certainly more lighthearted.
Yeah, so another difference from the first two films is we get a new Batman. Not everybody gets replaced, but we do get a new Batman, that being Val Kilmer, taking the titular role. No no pun there on the bat nipples, which we'll talk about here soon. But yeah, so this is where we get Val, no longer Michael Keaton, who I'm going to ask a question about that a little bit later on. But you do have Val Kilmer in the role. And of course, I guess maybe we could go down the rest of the cast of characters. You have Jim Carrey, who is playing the Riddler, or Edward Nygma, who at the time, white hot. I mean, this is as hot as Jim Carrey had ever been in Hollywood. A huge boon to bring him in. You also had Tommy Lee Jones, who is basically replacing Billy D. Williams as Two-Face / Harvey Dent, which Billy D. Williams, interestingly, he initially signed on to do the Batman movies, expecting that he would eventually get to play Two-Face. But somehow that changed. They must have bought out his contract, whatever. We get a new love interest, that being Nicole Kidman playing Dr. Chase Meridian, and the introduction of Robin in this movie being played by a very young Chris O'Donnell, who would also be a pretty hot commodity at the time, coming off of, I think he did Scent of a Woman with Al Pacino at this time, and some other films. Circle of Friends he would end up doing, I mean, whatever. Anyway, he was kind of a hot commodity as well. So you're getting big names in this movie. Nicole Kidman was a big name at this time. Val Kilmer might have been the lowest name on the totem pole as far as actors in this. Not that Val Kilmer wasn't known. Of course, he was in Top Gun and so on. But it's an interesting cast. Michael Gough is returning as Alfred, and is it Pat Hingle? I think is the guy who plays Commissioner Gordon. He's returned. But otherwise, I mean, you got some new people here. Val Kilmer. How do you feel about Val Kilmer as Batman / Bruce Wayne? And in fact, if you want to rate them separately, feel free.
Oh, man. So, I know I've told you about this previously, and you were kind of surprised. I guess this is an unpopular opinion, but I didn't like Val Kilmer as Batman. I felt like the previous Batman was so much better. Like, he just doesn't seem as serious or believable. I don't know. I guess I get more of like it felt as if he had grown up rich and he like took all of these things for granted. Like, this is the first movie where you get to see
a lot more Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, you see a lot more Bruce Wayne. You actually get to see Wayne Industries.
Right.
Like where he's making all of this money from.
Wayne Enterprises, but that's okay.
Did I say Wayne Industries?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No,
yeah,
it's
Wayne
okay, because somebody's going to say, no, it's Stark Industries and Wayne Enterprises, so I'm just cutting them off at the pass.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay.
So anyway, I just didn't get the sense that Val Kilmer had this, like, internal struggle or this split personality.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't that darkness to him the way that I feel like Batman in previous movies had really expressed.
Yeah, where like Michael Keaton, you could kind of see that he had a dark side.
Yeah.
As to where it looks like, holy shit, Val Kilmer is like just a playboy, and he's always a playboy. Is that kind of what you felt?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know if I would say playboy, but yeah, something like that.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had funny opinions on this, where I feel like Val Kilmer does a great Bruce Wayne. because he does come off as, I mean, especially with Batman Returns, like Michael Keaton comes off as a bit of a goof, as to where, like, especially when Val Kilmer puts on the glasses, like, it's very believable that this is this young billionaire who runs a tech company. But at the same time, I hear you. Like, it is very different from Michael Keaton, and I don't think he matches up either with the comic book or, like, any other real rendition of Batman. He might have been chosen to be more like the 66 Batman, which we still haven't watched, and that was done by, of course, the late great Adam West, where he's somebody that you could take seriously, but then you don't take too seriously, which would kind of fit in with what you're saying. But yeah, I mean, I think his biggest claim to fame for being Batman is he did all of his own stunts, which at the time CGI was not owning the day yet in Hollywood, and that was a big deal. Like, for him to be legit in the bat suit doing the business. I liked him a lot, and I feel like I like him more than I like Michael Keaton, but I completely respect and understand why a lot of people like Michael Keaton better. Like, I really get that.
Yeah, and another thing, we're actually talking about this earlier today. Michael Keaton has such an expressive face that can say things without saying words.
Yeah, Val Kilmer does not have that.
No,
I agree with you. Yep. No, I agree with you. Val Kilmer is not a one-trick pony. He's a fine actor, but I don't know. It's always Val Kilmer. As to where, I mean, Michael Keaton, you could say, is always Michael Keaton, but Michael Keaton can pull off the air of whatever the character needs to be, can kind of be there. Like anybody that can go from Mr. Mom to Beetlejuice inside of a few years. I mean, that's incredible to have that kind of. Yeah, it's amazing. He's a tremendous actor. I wouldn't put Val Kilmer in the same league of actors as Michael Keaton, certainly. But I did think he did a good Batman. But I understand your point, where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, Batman is supposed to be this, like, demented, tortured, like, split personality character. And
right.
Val Kilmer I don't think he pulled it off.
Yeah, now, interestingly, and maybe this allowed for bringing this new Batman in, or this new actor playing Batman in, I'll bring up early on. I want to talk about the other actors, the villains, and everything, how you feel about Robin, and of course, the love interest of the movie. But this is a very controversial film for a lot of reasons. The original cut of the film that Joel Schumacher did was two things. One, apparently it was much darker. Wasn't as like happy-go-lucky, perhaps, as this movie ended up being. Two, it went like 2 hours and 40 minutes, which right now it just clocks in at about 2 hours. There is what's called the Red Book edition of this movie, which you can kind of find online. I have a DVD copy of it, but it's a little difficult to get your hands on it right now. Where it is a guy like 10 years ago cut this movie up, put in some of the deleted scenes, because throughout the movie, there's this plot line of Bruce Wayne like having repressed memories, which is why he's working with Dr. Chase Meridian at points. And he keeps seeing this red book that his dad had written into, in this, you get a Batman who realizes he doesn't have to be two different people, and that he can choose to be Batman and Bruce Wayne and can kind of accept that. As to where Michael Keaton was more like, I just have this darker side that I don't want to tell anybody about. This movie brings in, especially if you watch the Red Book edition, brings in a version of Batman where he's like, no, this is who I am. I'm both Bruce Wayne and Batman, and I choose to be that. It's a powerful message. It's a shame. A lot of the deleted scenes that I saw in the Red Book edition, which you didn't watch this one, but I really recommend people check it out. It's not perfect. It tries to get rid of a lot of the neon, and I think that fails, and it makes it like too dark of a film. Like literally the gamma is too dark. It's like a matter of light, not even just a matter of tone. But, there was an attempt to make Batman something more accessible and not so dark a character, I think, within this. And so ditching Michael Keaton, or not having Michael Keaton on board, was a good choice. But then and I kind of want to ask you this, but I think I want to save it for when we review Batman and Robin, is who do you imagine like could do a great Batman at this time? And because I think that's an interesting question to ask, is who could replace Michael Keaton if you needed to? So we can save that for the next one. But Anyway, the point is that it makes sense to have a new Batman in this because they are very much going in a new direction. Now, let's talk about, while we're at it, let's talk about our other heroes in this, then we can get into the villains. Speaking of new direction, you do end up with Robin. Now, Robin, originally they were talking about bringing in 92's Batman Returns, which they were originally going to use Marlon Wayans, a black guy, which I think would have been tremendous. I would have been totally on board with that. But instead we get Chris O'Donnell. And he comes in as Robin. How did you feel about Chris O'Donnell as Robin? How do you feel about like that character overall?
Oh, he's totally fine. He fit the role.
Right.
You know, he's young, ambitious, seems naive. I mean, that's all the things that like a under 18 person should be.
Pulls off the rebelliousness, would you say?
Very rebellious, yeah.
Sure, okay.
He certainly pulls that off. Also, the fact that he's been an acrobat and like is strong enough to like pull himself up and like do all these neat tricks, like that's really believable.
Yeah.
Like he seems like he'd be in shape enough to do that.
Right.
So, yeah, I thought he fit the role.
Yeah, so where you're like, well, that doesn't really feel like Batman, Robin, yeah, this works.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just a young, new character.
Sure. Yeah, I would have loved Marlon Wayans, but I get it, and a lot of people talked about they wish Michael J. Fox would have taken that role. By 95, that wouldn't have worked for obvious reasons. But Chris O'Donnell, I thought, was fine. He has, like, this very young voice and, like, these very young eyes that pull off that naiveness that your naivete that you were describing. So I thought it worked. I thought he did a tremendous job for the role that he was put into. And it helped change the tone of this movie a bit, though I'm going to ask you a question about Robin later on. We'll get into that. So let's get to our other hero, who is basically, I mean, Michael Gough, of course, is tremendous in this as Alfred. Alfred's always the best.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and he does a great job in this. Especially there's a scene where Robin or Dick Grayson ends up stealing the Batmobile at one point in this. And he's, Bruce is on a date with Chase Meridian, quasi date, and Alfred calls him on his video watch, which video watches all the rage. Everybody thought that was going to be the thing in the 90s. Like, I can remember this over and over again, that like every magazine, Popular Mechanics, whatever, was predicting we were going to have video watches. So Bruce Wayne has one, and Michael Gough, as Alfred is on there, he's like, sir, unfortunately, Master Grayson has taken the car. And he's like, oh, the Jaguar? And he's like, no, the other car. And he keeps going down. And then finally Michael Gough is just like, no, the other car. And then, of course he realizes, oh, the Batmobile. Michael Gough is tremendous. Like, everything he does, he really keeps us down to earth. And is the main, I think, continuity between the first two films and this film. Like, he's what makes it all kind of come together. So yeah, you enjoyed his performance again as well. Yeah,
again, he's one of those people that just has a very expressive face and
right.
Doesn't have too many lines, but you have such a strong character there.
Yeah, it's powerful every time he speaks, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Nicole Kidman as the love interest, very much replacing Vicky Vale, replacing Catwoman. She comes in, she's a psychiatrist, I guess.
Psychologist.
Or psychologist, yeah. Two very different things. But she plays Dr. Chase Meridian, and wow, did they turn up the, forward sexy and sexuality in this movie, which is funny because it's billed for kids. But you get a female lead who is acting, shall we say, hotter than, well, maybe not than Catwoman, but certainly than Vicky Vale. But how did you feel about the character of Dr. Chase Meridian?
Oh, I mean, she did a fine job, too, as the love interest. Yeah, I mean, it was believable that she was a psychologist. I don't really know that it was called for to have her in the story, but it made sense that, she would be advising on the case. And also, kind of interestingly enough, her fascination with psychology might have something to do with her own psychological problems, which you do get to see in the film, too, because she becomes obsessed with Batman.
Right. And she talks about how she's, always falling in love with the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, continue.
Right, so, no, I just thought that was interesting and, a little more play on the darker psychology that is part of the Batman story.
Yeah, so in the 90s, a couple things. Actually, this is true going into the late 80s and the 90s. Hollywood will, force a love story into, say, an action movie or something like that. For whatever reason, it's still a mystery to me. I don't know why they were so big about that. Maybe they thought it was their way to get women to come in and, see these action flicks as well. I'm not sure what it was. I'm sure it's something terrible and also banal and, simpleton. That the reason that they do that. So for you to feel like, well, it didn't really need the love story, a lot of times that's true for movies of that day, where like, wait, that feels very forced. And it's kind of because it is. The other thing is that psychology and like getting into repressed memories and a lot of these other things, or going to your therapist, all that kind of stuff, was a really hot topic in the 90s. Really hot topic. And it gives, to give this film some perhaps legitimacy, make it seem more real or something like that, they were definitely dealing with the pop psychology at the time. And they brought her in as a character really to explore Batman. And I thought that made her a very valid character. I also like that, this is a lost art in Hollywood, in my opinion. I'll talk about this more with another movie that we'll review. But the ability to very quickly give you character exposition without having to tell an entire 20-minute backstory. Where, okay, like Chase Meridian, can she fight with Batman? Can she kick ass and all this stuff? They just have her at a point where she's kickboxing in her office. And it looks totally believable because Gotham City's ridiculous. But it looks totally believable, and you accept that, okay, no, this is a strong, very strong character. She's brilliant, and she's got moves, like literal physical moves. So I thought that worked. It made her seem like she could really go toe-to-toe with Batman, both mentally and again, somewhat physically. That was there, which would become important perhaps later on. How did you feel about her? She's a very upfront character. Like, she's hitting on Batman. No bones about it. No filters. Like, she even activates the bat signal at one point, and she's there in lingerie. Knowing exactly what she did. And, like, how do you feel about the character from that angle, from her sexuality angle?
Well, I do appreciate that she was so straightforward with Batman about her feelings.
Sure.
Yeah, I found it kind of surprising that, she herself being a psychologist has this obsession with Batman and his split personality. Mm-hmm. Like, she's on the case for, what was it, Two-Face? When he's, she's supposed to be, like, helping the police to, like, build a psychological profile of him.
Right.
To, like, find his weakness or something. And she doesn't seem to have any attraction to Two-Face.
Yeah, right.
It's just Batman.
Yeah.
But no, I do like that she seemed to be like very straightforward. She wasn't waiting for Batman to make a move. You know, she even like invites him to her apartment at midnight, and she's like sleeping naked.
Yeah.
And then just right there, she tells him like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I have met someone. I find myself hoping that you're someone else."
Yeah, which she's referencing Bruce Wayne.
Right.
So, of course, Batman's very happy about this. He's like, oh, well,
Right.
Yeah.
Because Bruce Wayne was, like, not sure if she loved him or Batman.
Right.
But I really appreciate, because there's not many films that do this, where, like, women are just straightforward about their feelings and are, like, almost, I don't want to say, like, aggressive, but, like, straightforward and honest about how they feel and aren't afraid to express themselves.
Yeah, it's very rare in a film that you get the woman asking the guy out. And that's exactly what was happening here multiple times in this movie. And it's with Batman, no less.
Yeah.
Which was very interesting. So, yeah, that's a great point that you bring up about her. I always thought she was a really cool character. Like, I don't know why the comics never did more with her. I felt like she was very believable as an equal to Batman in a lot of respects. Batman's Batman, but where she is a character that you could believe Batman would fall in love. That's what I mean by saying she's an equal to Batman. She's on par, because I think a lot of people are just like, okay, no, really only Catwoman can ever be with Batman. And I think that's kind of boring. Wonder Woman's been with Batman and everything, but Batman is just a human, and it's nice to know that he can fall in love with other human beings.
Well, obviously, he does seem like a playboy, because, like, every movie has a different love interest.
Yeah. You'll see when we get to the Christopher Nolan films, we'll get into more of that, his love interest and style. But Anyway, regardless, I think she's one of the better characters that the Batman mythos has ever brought up, and doesn't really get enough credit. But then that's the story of this movie, is that other than the fact that it made a shit ton of money in its day and was very well received, these days it seems like people all hate this movie, and I just cannot grasp why. But regardless of that, we'll keep going. So yeah, Chase Meridian, good character.
Yeah.
Yeah, good replacement for like Vicky Vale. Yeah, we'd love to have Catwoman back, but
yeah, I mean, I feel like she doesn't push the story along. Like, she's not so much a part of the plot. But
sure.
I guess as far as character exposition goes for Batman, she does play an important role in that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, fair. So let's talk about the villains. I mean, and this was, these are big names. Tommy Lee Jones, white hot at the time, playing Two-Face. Jim Carrey, ridiculously white hot at this point, coming off of Ace Ventura, The Mask, and, his stint on In Living Color and all this. How do you, let's start off with Two-Face. How do you feel about Two-Face as a villain in this movie? I mean, weak, strong,
Well, first of all, like, Two-Face is supposed to be Harvey Dent.
Right.
And there's a brief description of what happened to Harvey Dent.
Right.
And why he's seeking revenge on Batman. And it's so brief, and it's, like, not really believable, but they just run with it throughout the entire film. And, it's like, he's in a courtroom, somebody throws acid on his face, Batman tries to stop it from happening, but it's too late. So now it's Batman's fault. And Two-Face is Two-Face because half of his face was burnt, and the other half is normal. And somehow, like, totally splits his personality. Like, he goes wacko.
Yeah.
Which I think is what they call him in the film. He's a wacko.
Yeah, so what you're saying is he's a total wacko.
Yeah.
Like, that's the quote. and Bruce, like, that's what Dr. Meridian says, and Bruce is like, is that a technical term, doctor? And then he repeats it. It's like, so she says the technical term, which means he's like schizo or something. And then he just says, so you're saying he's a total wacko. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was a funny moment. Like, I mean, there's some good lines in this movie, in my opinion. Some funny ones. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, so anyway, it's just hard for me to, like, because Harvey Dent wasn't, like, a huge major character in the other two films. He looked very different. You didn't get to see a lot of his character, I guess. He's supposed to be some hero of Gotham City. Yeah. Like, reforming it. And then in this film, suddenly it's, like, a totally new face and a totally different character from what I was familiar with in the previous two films.
Right, with Billy D. Williams in the first one, yeah. Right.
So it's kind of a struggle to, like, draw the parallels between the two. But as far as villain goes, he has all of the evil plans. Like, he's trying to steal this giant vault, trying to kill Batman with acid. Yeah. And oh man, just seeing his lair was really funny too, because it's literally split down the middle the same way that his face and his clothes are.
Yeah, it's like, I think the Riddler says it's heavy metal meets good housekeeping or something like that. Yeah.
Right, and his two girlfriends are Sugar and Spice.
One of them which is Drew Barrymore, by the way.
Yeah.
An interesting minor role for her, because she was also a big actress at this point. But yeah, anyway, so Two-Face, keep going.
Yeah, so I mean, I think he's just supposed to be a wacky, evil character. Like, he didn't seem really menacing. He was just out for revenge and willing to do anything in order to take out Batman. But he didn't have that menacing character because he was so reckless. Right. Like, he's not one of those evil characters that's, like, brilliant and clever and, like, always plotting. He's just, kind of brute forcing it in a way.
Yeah, so I want to address a couple things on that. And you're right, he is brute forcing it. So one is that at the time, Batman the Animated Series is the biggest thing on TV for, like, everybody. Kids, adults, everybody's watching this fucking cartoon. And Two-Face is one of the major villains in that. And he gets a lot of exposition in that. He gets a lot of development within that. And I think that I think Warner Brothers probably felt pretty confident that everybody's watching Batman the Animated Series. They're going to know who the hell this is. Now, come 2019, that's a very different story. Like, you don't have that background of Two-Face. And so I think you wanting more explanation, how did this guy become a thing, makes total sense. And I think you're vindicated because in the movie The Dark Knight, which is the middle movie in Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy from the past decade, there's a lot, like the crux of the entire movie is the creation of Two-Face. So yeah, that needed to happen. It should have happened. It could have happened. Myself, I would have loved to have seen Billy D. Williams in this role. I think it would have been so cool for him to go nuts because I think he could do nuts and it would come off as really classy. Tommy Lee Jones is a great actor. Would you agree with that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, right.
He's more of a serious actor. That's how I've seen him in other films.
Yeah, I think it's almost weird to see him in this role. He does it. He pulls it off, but it's weird. I also think that with Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face, ironically, I think you buy that he's the villain, though. And, like, you don't even really need to know all of his motivations. It's like, yeah, Batman's got to stop this guy. As to where I think with Penguin in the last movie, you don't really buy his plans. Like, what the fuck is he even, like, really doing? What is he exactly about? He seems menacing because he's such, like, a grotesque character and so much. But, I don't know. I feel like I understand why Batman's going after Two-Face, even without very little backstory, as to where the conflict with the Penguin seems a lot more ambiguous.
Well, the conflict with the Penguin seems that way because he had long-term plans, and he wasn't openly committing acts of violence.
Sure.
He had a different group doing that for him, whereas Two-Face is just going out there and blowing up stuff and trying to steal things.
Right.
Like, he isn't hiding his intentions at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I don't know, it seemed to work, but it really worked, I think. If it was just Two-Face in this movie, it wouldn't have worked. Like, Tommy Lee Jones would not have been enough to carry the villainy in this movie. You needed Jim Carrey as the Riddler. And
Yes.
wow. I mean, the role, I can believe that Joel Schumacher, the director, just said, Jim, just go out there and do what you do. You know, here's the lines, but if you want to, like, ad-lib here and there, go for it. And I think Jim Carrey did, and he just delivered right and left. I mean, I thought Jim Carrey as the Riddler was perfect. And I mean, you're following up Frank Goshen's performance from the '66 Batman, and Jim Carrey's just as crazy. His laugh is fantastic. Everything he does is absolutely believable, and you also believe that he's brilliant because Jim Carrey looks like kind of an odd genius. I think if you get him in the right role, he does look the part. How did you feel about Jim Carrey as the Riddler in this?
Well, I loved it. I loved every part of it. I mean, even as Edward Nygma, when he's working for Wayne Enterprises.
Right.
He has this brilliant idea, and Bruce Wayne is his role model, his hero.
Yeah.
Like, he just wants to make him proud.
Yeah.
And amaze him with his new invention.
Right.
So, and, like, the story for his becoming an evil villain is totally believable. Because, Bruce is like, there's too many questions. We can't just approve this right now.
Yeah, because he's developing, like, this brain wave altering technology that's supposed to let people see, like, the pictures on your TV come to life, like, right in front of you. And, of course, Bruce Wayne's like, whoa, you're going to be altering people's brain waves? The ethics of this is bad news. Yeah, continue. So, right, but he shuts him down.
Yeah. Oh, I just love the story arc for that character.
Sure.
Yeah, so... he goes crazy. He ends up killing a guy, testing his device out on him, and then, develops himself into the Riddler.
Yeah.
And that's just fun to watch. Like, I don't often feel as connected to... Well, I wouldn't say, like, connected, but, like, I was excited to see every moment that he was on screen.
Yeah.
Like, even though he was playing a villain, he was just so much fun because he was totally crazy.
Yeah.
And just obsessed with, like, getting his technology out there and having fun, like, playing games with Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of his outfits were totally fabulous. At one point during the film, I was watching the Riddler and Two-Face interacting, and over again, I keep seeing them, like, acting as if they were a gay couple.
You had said this, and now you don't know, like, the Hollywood industry, say, to the level of some, who would talk about this kind of movie. It was amazing when you brought that up, and I'm like, I don't think that's on accident, because I mean Joel Schumacher, and it's no problem. I think it's great. I would love it if they like actually played that up, explicitly and said, "Oh yeah, now we're in love." But Joel Schumacher is gay, and a lot of people have made a lot of critiques about his stuff, where like giving Batman nipples and like the butt outline and everything, that this is all, or even the zipper on the butt, that this was all, very, very homosexual in what he was putting on display. Now, I mean, for decades, the argument that Batman and Robin are homosexual, have a homosexual relationship, has been levied. I mean, just forever. Like that's just always, if there's anything forever about Batman, it's that. And yeah, I thought that was very insightful of you to hit on that. And I think there might be something there. And I think, great. I love it, if that's the case. I mean, Riddler had to have some of the best lines in this movie, too.
Yeah, he was very fun.
Yeah. I was going to bring, you kind of hit at it already, because I was going to ask you about that, about the potential gay relationship between these two characters, but you already kind of knocked on that. Yeah, I mean, Jim Carrey, well, here, let me ask you this. So I think for a lot of people who grew up with Jim Carrey's movies, they might have gotten a little, I don't want to say sick. Jim Carrey is Jim Carrey.
Yeah, he's got his own style.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, and his comedy, a lot of people feel like it's not very 90s. I think it defined the 90s. Like, he set the tone for a lot of comedy in the 90s. And so I think a lot of people don't look at the Riddler character with as much fun and kindness, like as you are, because they see it as, oh, that's so fucking 90s, because it's, it's Jim Carrey's comedy. But I disagree, and I think that now, removed from the onslaught of Jim Carrey movies, where Jim Carrey was just being Jim Carrey, it's refreshing again to see that kind of comedy. That's how I felt about it, seeing it in 2019, as compared to when I saw it in theaters, actually multiple times, back in 1995. Jim Carrey's comedy felt refreshing compared to the bullshit Marvel comedy of today. I really enjoyed that. So you liked this comedy, though. That worked for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen tons of Jim Carrey movies in the past, and I think what you said about just having some distance from that, it is really refreshing, because he's got such a unique style where he just ridiculously overacts and isn't afraid to do the goofy shit.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I was coming home, like seeing that comedy again. It was like, oh, this is so great. I really, really liked his comedy. I thought that worked. So out of these characters in this movie, the big five here, or you can include Alfred if you really want, who would you say is your favorite character of the bunch in Batman Forever?
Oh my gosh.
It's obviously not Batman.
No, I'd probably have to say the Riddler.
Yeah, sure.
I love his character so much. He writes these riddles. He's brilliant. He's an inventor.
Yeah.
Obviously he's evil and doesn't care about the people that he's essentially like stealing their intelligence by using these devices. But
yeah, just call it the box.
Yeah, the box. But I just love the way that he's presented and acted out, and yeah, just very fun, very fabulous, funny, brilliant. He's got it all. Yeah, I mean, if this were a different Batman movie, I might pick a different favorite character, but from this movie, he is definitely my favorite. Yeah, well, this is a movie where, Warner Brothers really seemed to, their order of the day with the Batman series was just go bigger, more heroes, more villains. Because in the next movie, that's exactly what we get. We get more villains. In this one we have two, and then we have the introduction of a new hero, that being Robin. But then in the next one, we get Batgirl, and they just keep piling on and piling on and piling on. So it's at a point where you can ask, wait, who's your favorite character of this cast of characters? Because it very much is a cast that you finally have now. It's not just Batman anymore and the one villain. So I think it's a valid question to bring up. I love the Riddler in this as well. I do really like Val Kilmer's Batman, though, and so I kind of have to give it to Batman in this. Especially if you watch the Red Book edition of this movie. You get a lot more into the psychology of Batman that I thought was a lot of fun. Like, there's basically this reveal where Batman finds out, because he thought
that because he wanted to go to the movies that night, that's why his parents died. And if he hadn't done that, if they just stayed home, this is a very common trope in Hollywood now. But if he had just, it's kind of, I think you even said, like, it was the Michael Burnham syndrome.
Yeah, this is exactly the same story as Michael Burnham, where she feels like it's her fault that her parents died. And then she finds out years later, no, it's not. Right,
exactly. And that's what happens here is he finds out, oh no, in his dad's journal, his dad actually wanted to go see a different movie than what Bruce wanted to see. And so going to see that movie and it getting it out at the time that they did is really why where they were in that alleyway when they got shot. And so he finds out it's not my fault. And it's a powerful moment. And it's a damn pity that it's not in the movie, because I think it gives Val Kilmer a little bit more of an opportunity to shine. But I mean, even without that, I've watched this movie many, many times, and I really do. I dig Val Kilmer. But Riddler would certainly be right up there for me as well. So I completely respect that pick. And especially being a little bit removed from the onslaught of Jim Carrey movies, I think that makes a ton of sense. He was brilliant at what he does. He was and is, in my opinion. So why don't we let's talk about some of the more technical aspects of the movie, get into one of my favorite things to talk about, and something that was very different. We talked about how the tone of this movie was not so dark. It felt a lot more like it's a lighter Batman. It felt a lot more like the 66 Batman, which I think is what they were going for. And just to touch on that quickly, people don't realize that the 66 Batman series, while even at this point would be 30 years old, or almost 30 years old, that show was just as big then as it was in the 60s. I remember as a kid, I would go to the mall and they would do mall tours of the original Batmobile from the 66 Batman, which was the Ford Futura. And you'd go there and you'd see it and you'd get to take a picture sitting in it for, I don't know, $5-10, whatever. And, you had people lining up to do this because that show still really mattered. Particularly because Fox at the time was a new network, not Fox News, but just Fox. And so they were using a lot of old shows to build up the network, which is what a lot of cable networks do. A lot of networks do this. And the 66 Batman was one of those shows. And that made it, in conjunction with Batman the Animated Series and everything else, it was still a big deal. So to want to copy that style made tons of sense at the time, to go that direction. Now, the music in the movie, just the score itself, not the extraneous music around it, which we'll talk about that. The music in the movie is not as dark as Danny Elfman's work, I would say. And we end up with a new composer, that being Elliot Goldenthal. You get a new theme. Some of the themes get reused from the previous two Batman movies, but you do get a very new, more bombastic, shall we say, theme. How do you feel about the music for Batman Forever? I know you actually went back, and I have it on my Plex server. Of course, I have tons of soundtracks. But I certainly have the Batman Forever soundtrack. I know you went back and listened to it. I mean, what did you think of the music for Batman Forever?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask this question, so I had to do some review. Because when I watch movies, I'm more of a visual. I focus on the visuals. And the music, like, I certainly feel the emotion that it's putting out. But, yeah, going back and listening through to it, it was a lot more bombastic. I think that's a good word for it. It was... It was certainly, like, more upbeat, a little more fantastical. I really enjoyed listening to it.
Yeah, so you enjoyed the score. Like, it was, yeah.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, it was kind of like a happier, more, I guess, like, carnival theme, still fits in with that.
It gets reused a lot for carnival scenes, too, like that main theme does. Yeah, continue.
Actually, yeah, a lot throughout the film. Like, the main theme is just replayed in, like, different ways.
Yep, different pitch, different tone, yeah.
Yeah, maybe different instruments.
Yep.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was more uplifting. It didn't seem, like, ominous or dark. Just kind of fun.
Yeah, the Danny Elfman theme is a classic. There's no doubt about that. But I thought Elliot Goldenthal's theme was right up there, with it, where... It's great for the action. It's just as intense. It gets you moving, and you get the point that this is, it's still dark. It still feels kind of dark, but it is also a lot. There's some levity to it, And it works in a lot of other places as well, which is interesting. It almost becomes, I feel like, the theme for Gotham as much as it's the theme for Batman. And yeah, I love the soundtrack for this movie. The score is really, I mean, if you can get your hands on the 2-disc version, I totally recommend it. It's a lot of fun, and that's really what you recognize, is just how fun this is, which is kind of a theme of the movie. I mean, there's some serious points, but it's meant to be very fun. Now, the score, now this is the 90s, so at the time, a very popular thing to do would be to sell you a CD that said music from and inspired by the motion picture Batman Forever, in this case. Whatever you can insert whatever movie title you want at that point. And this was usually where you would sell music that either was actually in the movie, maybe 1 or 2 songs, and then you just put a bunch of other bullshit on it. A couple songs on this soundtrack, not the score, but the soundtrack, were actually in the film. But a couple songs on this did pretty big numbers, that being Hold Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me, Thrill Me, I think that's the title of it, by U2. And then there's Kiss from a Rose by Seal, who was a big deal at the time. These 2 songs, they're not really in the film. They get played during the credits. I don't know. I mean, they're good. They're good songs, but it doesn't really have any bearing on the film, in my opinion. But just to say that, like, this soundtrack is one of the best-selling soundtracks of all time, you know, I mean, that speaks to just how hot people were about this property and about this movie back then. So, but overall, with the Elliot Goldenthal score, you really enjoyed that. You really liked that.
Yes, yeah, it was a lot more memorable than, like, Batman Returns.
Yeah, which had a very subdued score.
Yeah.
And not as played up as, say, the 89 Batman, which had an amazing mixture of both pop and Danny Elfman's. I mean, that's a very unique animal. I don't even think you can really compare it. Very few movies ever pull that off. And with memorable music, memorable pop music, as well as memorable scoring, you know, which Danny Elfman pulled off in the 89 Batman. Yeah, okay, so that was on. The acting, I mean, these are some of the biggest actors of their day. Actors that are still huge today, tremendous. I don't think there's a whole lot to really say on that. The direction, Joel Schumacher, I mean, it felt good. There wasn't anything. Did you feel anything was like too corny to where it's like, oh, come on, that's ridiculous? Like, did you ever feel that way at all in this movie?
No, I don't remember feeling that way at all. Like, everything that happened was kind of, you know, pulled off the way it needed to be. The only thing, like, you were talking about the Red Book edition, where it kind of goes into an explanation as to, like, what happened with, what happened when, like, going through the Red Book, finding out what was written in there.
Through his dad's journal, yeah.
Yeah, there was a moment in this film where Bruce Wayne, you know, decides that he can be both Batman and Bruce Wayne. But it seemed like it came out of nowhere almost. Like, there wasn't a lot of explanation as to that. And it was just a little sudden, I guess.
Right.
Like, you know, for a film that focuses so much on psychology, it wasn't, like, explaining the lead up to the big breakthrough. He just, you know, made the breakthrough.
Yeah, it's a shame that Warner Brothers really cut this film down to size. And there are little moments like that, where you could tell there must have been some subplot somewhere that we just didn't get when it went into theaters, you know. I would have loved it if they restored it. I mean, it'd be a great time if they're re-releasing everything in 4K. It would have been dynamite if they would have done some kind of like restoration, put in the deleted scenes and everything. But they didn't, unfortunately. So, all right, well, let's touch on a couple other things with this movie. One is the Batmobile in this movie. I mean, the Batmobile is as much a star of any Batman movie or any Batman production as Batman himself. And the Batmobile in this movie, of course, we know at the end of, or towards the end of Batman Returns, the Batmobile is getting repaired after becoming the Missile midway through that. But I don't think everybody expected to get a totally new Batmobile in this film, considering how iconic the Batmobile from the previous 2 films was and really still is. I mean, most people consider that to be the best Batmobile ever devised, and I don't want to argue with them much. I really like this Batmobile, but I'll explain why more on that. But I want to hear from you, Ellen. How do you feel about the Batmobile in Batman Forever? And you can also compare it to the previous one.
Oh, I mean, I think this one looks really cool. There's some things about it that I felt like were a little over the top, like the stupid tall fin.
Oh, yeah. No,
I
I'll
feel
agree
like
with you
that's
on
very
that.
90s.
Yep, I agree with you. That does, and it can split. We never understand why it can split open either. But go ahead.
Yeah, does it have something to do with lift? Is it generating lift or something? But
well, one of the cool things it can do is it can launch a grappling hook and it can drive up walls, which it does do in this movie, which was a nice homage to Batman and Robin climbing the walls in the 66 Batman series. But yeah, maybe it has to do with lift. I don't know, but it never explained. Continue.
yeah, well, that is a very cool trick. The driving up a wall.
Yeah.
That's something I would expect out of a Batmobile.
Sure, absolutely.
You also mentioned that this Batmobile had a scene where it turns its wheels 90 degrees and just drives sideways.
Yeah.
Which is another really neat trick.
Yep.
It's kind of reminiscent of in the previous film where the Batmobile has a pole or a post that comes out from beneath and totally spins the car around 180 degrees.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I just thought it was that was a really neat addition, which actually came in handy in one of the chase scenes where I think it was Two-Face was shooting rockets at the Batmobile.
Yeah, and the Batmobile could literally just strafe away from the rocket. Yeah.
Yeah, and he ended up blowing up his own henchman or something.
Right.
But yeah, that was a very cool addition to the Batmobile. There was some design on the Batmobile that it was spider web or stained glass or something like that. You said it looked organic.
Yeah, and it almost looks like a rib cage.
Kind of.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I think makes it look so cool. Is it looks very alive. I'll admit in 4K, which I think they did a really serious remastering, and that's what we ended up seeing in theaters. I never noticed this before. I never saw this before. I have models of this Batmobile because I really love the design. Other than the big fin, I'm with you on that. I didn't notice it until we saw it in theaters. What's underneath that rib cage, and you see that blue or that cyan neon glow kind of coming out from underneath it, all it is it's like an LCD screen that makes it look like an engine under there, but there's not an actual engine. It's an LCD screen, making it look like there's a bunch of piping and wiring and all this other stuff. And I'll admit, I was really disappointed when I saw that in theaters.
No.
I was like, oh, what the fuck? Because I thought it was such a cool design where you could kind of get in there and see all the inner workings underneath and everything. And no, it's just an LCD screen to make it look good on screen. And you don't notice it until you get it in such high resolution. But I was like, oh, fuck, that sucks.
But anyway. Isn't that still part of the fantasy?
Well, it's fine. But now you saw how the sausage was made.
Oh, no.
and it's just kind of disappointing. Because they do so much to give it the jet engine and make so much of it look very real, that to have that was just oh, you guys cheated. You cut cost on it by putting that there. But anyway, that's how they did it. So, but continue if you have more to say on it.
Yeah, I thought that design, it was very stylistic and very unique. I still like the shape of the previous Batmobile better, but this one, it's not bad,
Yeah.
It's still believable as a Batmobile.
It's nowhere near as bad as the one in Batman and Robin. Well,
I don't want to get it. I haven't mentioned this. You keep bringing up Batman and Robin. I am not going to fall for it.
You are saving yourself.
Yes.
You are saving yourself for marriage. You are going to wait, and when you're married, then you're just going to unload on this movie.
We're not talking about Batman and Robin right now.
Okay. Because, oh boy. Anyway, okay. So you like this Batmobile. It's serviceable. In the grander scheme of Batman, the fact that it's so bright, it has these neon lights and everything, I think that's actually kind of dumb. Because Batman should be stealthy.
Yes.
You don't see him coming. But for the movie, and to fit in with the 90s, neon-drenched everything, bit of business about it, I like it. It feels like it's time, and it works.
Yeah, especially when Dick Grayson steals the Batmobile and is, going out looking for ladies.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing I love. Yeah, that works too. But I also love that it still has two seats in it.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that. But the Batmobile should always be a two-seater.
There's room for two in here.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it works on all that. I mean, it's a little too low to the ground, but then if you're going to complain about that, you're going to complain about the one from the previous two films as well, because that's a very low rider. But, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to put in, like, my favorite Batmobiles of all time, but as far as the movies go, it's pretty high up there. As far as, like, any live action or any kind of even animated action version of it. So, okay. Well, why don't we move on from that to... Now, that Batmobile does end up getting destroyed. That's an important point to bring up. So we end up with an end battle where Batman and Robin are now fully accepting of the fact that they're partners. They're going to go take care of Riddler and Two-Face. Of course, Two-Face is responsible for the death of Dick Grayson's family, of trapeze artists and all this. So he has revenge on the brain. He's going to help Batman take care of this. After a moment of deliberation of whether or not Bruce Wayne wants to continue to be Batman because he doesn't want Dick to follow in the same path, and which is kind of interesting, but they don't play on it enough. Anyway, so it's end scene, end battle. We're going to go take care of stuff. Batman gets into a new version of the Batwing, which has very similar neon styling to the Batmobile, and Robin gets into a boat, into a Batboat. And which also looks very much like the Batmobile as far as stylings go, and they all have that organic look, which I like. I love the design of all of these vehicles in this movie, and I like the design language, that they have a similar design language. I think that works really well. But all of these vehicles end up getting destroyed. So I'm going to save my load on that and let you start to get into, how do you feel about this end battle between Batman, Robin, Dr. Chase Meridian's kidnapped here, captured, and they're going to go save her. And, they're taking on Riddler and Two-Face right on their giant box island.
Oh, super exciting. I think this is the most fun and entertaining end battle that we get out of the three Batman movies that we've reviewed so far.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
because,
I loved it.
I mean, there's going to be a better battle scene in Batman and Robin, right? Wink, wink. Yeah, right. Okay. Anyway. Sorry, you're not going to talk about this. No, we're not going to talk about that. All right, keep going.
So it starts out really, they're going by land and by sea. And you get to see, like, the bat boat underwater is, being attacked by these guys in scuba gear. And
yeah.
The flying bat...
Batwing.
The Batwing, okay, yeah. It, like, dives into the water. Batman jumps out to save Robin, and he nets all of these bad guys and hooks them to a buoy. That is so cool. Like, you just don't see many movies where, like, there's an underwater battle scene.
Yeah, outside of James Bond, this is fairly rare at the time, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, it's
not definitely not Aquaman, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Like that's crazy. Talk about underwater battle scenes.
That's pretty much 90%
underwater. That was just nuts.
But that was so epic.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just like a small group of guys, and it's totally believable that, Two-Face and the Riddler would have, like, a handful of people.
Of henchmen.
Yeah, exactly. Just guarding their crazy Palace of Doom, whatever this place is that they've been lured to.
Right.
Which actually seems super creepy. Like, when we go into it finally, it's like this old rotted wood, and it's like 40 feet high or something. There's this big trap set up. It can lift up and
everything, and it is crazy. Lots of neon. Yeah. Green everywhere. Yeah, that toxic green all over the place.
Actually, the Riddler's outfit in this scene is the best that it's been the whole movie.
Oh, the whole thing lights up. The white outfit and sparkles, and it just, Oh, I mean, he looks...
There are jewels everywhere. He looks incredible.
He is making the Yuletide gay. I mean, he really is. He's... I mean, and I'm amazed. Like, I don't know what exactly, like, Jim Carrey's BMI must have been at that point. I mean,
pretty low.
Yeah, like really low, because he is fitting into some trim stuff in this. I mean, all the outfits are very trim. Even when he's wearing a suit coat, which I love that suit coat that lights up. I always wanted one of those.
Yeah.
But so I agree. That's very epic. Continue.
Yeah. Oh, I just thought it was so beautiful and fun that they included that. Like, it's a really dark scene, but then there's the Riddler, who, like, as crazy of a character as he is, like, of course he's going to wear that fabulous jumpsuit, the bejeweled jumpsuit.
Right.
But he, of course, is the mastermind behind the whole setup. He's got Chase Meridian in one basket dangling over this giant 40-foot drop with, like, a bunch of spikes at the bottom. And in the other, there's... Who's the other prisoner that he had?
Well, he
Robin.
he ends up capturing Robin.
Yeah.
Like Two-Face, who Robin almost kills, but then saves him, in a moment of moral compass. And... but then, Two-Face just captures him at that point. Right.
Right. It never pays to show empathy to the villains, is what we learned from this scene.
That's the moral of this story. Yeah. Anyway, so continue.
Yeah, so, Batman has to choose between which one he's going to save, and he ends up saving them both and defeating the Riddler and Two-Face all in one. Yeah. And it's fun, it's great, and it's brilliant. It shows Batman's cleverness.
Yeah, and the Riddler is basically claiming to be a god. Like, he's become so brilliant because everybody, all the people in Gotham are buying these boxes, and he's getting all of their brainwaves and, all their intelligence or lack thereof.
And funny thing about that, like, Two-Face and the Riddler, it's shown in scenes where they're, like, swapping. They're both, like, taking turns absorbing people's IQ.
Right.
With the box. But somehow Two-Face doesn't seem to get any more intelligent throughout the film.
Yeah, maybe it's because it has to feed two brains, and it just takes longer. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good point. Now, speaking of the outfits, you mentioned... Oh, well, quick. I want to say, like, Jim Carrey believably raises the stakes in... Not that there's, like, a physical fisticuffs of any kind, but he raises the stakes where Batman has to outsmart, effectively, a god. And you really have a battle... I remember, like, as a young person, I'm like, wow, Batman's taking on God. Because, I mean, literally, the Riddler says that. It's like, are you taking on a man or a god? And, like, he makes his voice reverberate and everything. And I thought that was well done. Very simple, but gets to the point and just, again, raises the stakes of the battle itself. As ridiculous as it may all look. And speaking of ridiculous look, how do you feel about, because this is what a lot of people remember from Batman Forever. I think they're actually confusing much more Batman and Robin than Batman Forever as far as outfits go. But whatever, we'll save that for another episode. What do you think about the bat suits in this, or, like Robin? What do you think about Batman's outfit in this? What do you think about Robin's outfit in this?
I mean, Batman is Batman. I didn't really notice too much of a difference.
Didn't think much about the butt?
No, I mean...
The nipples?
No, it's totally natural.
Right.
It seems like a skin-tight rubber suit.
Yeah. I mean, I think, so, the rubber suit, Michael Keaton would wear something similar that would make him look a lot more muscular when it's a pretty good bet. Michael Keaton didn't look like that. Val Kilmer, I think, was a lot more legit in having all that on. But people really do go crazy about these nipples, about the nipples on. I agree with you. I think in Batman Forever, yeah, they do a close-up on it, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's like, no, it just looks okay. It's just accentuating the strength of the character and also making it so that the actor doesn't have to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something.
Yeah, you're going to show every bump on his body. Why not show his nipples too, right?
No,
I mean, like, they're showing every single ab muscle. Like, of course the nipples are going to still be there. I
think it would almost have looked weird if it was all chest and no nippage.
It'd be like a Ken doll.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I mean, if you have like Superman's symbol where it can cover like all of your chest, or if you have the bat symbol covering all the chest, which generally you don't, that wouldn't become a thing until later on in the comic books. It would barely ever get done in the movies. Yeah, I think you have to go there, and I thought that it worked. I had no problem with that. How did you feel about Robin's outfit?
Robin's outfit, so in the beginning of the movie, the only outfit he had was his acrobatic outfit, which
looks like the classic Robin outfit from decades past.
Yeah, super bright and colorful, just corny. Like, it didn't seem like he was Batman's counterpart. But the outfit that he comes out with later in the movie for the final battle, I thought that was very cool. It was a neat twist on his acrobatic outfit.
Yeah.
Like, the colors were there. They were still, like, darker, more subdued. But he definitely looked like he could have been Batman's partner. Like, he looked intimidating.
Yeah, I thought it was shockingly cool. Or, like, it was so cool looking. I couldn't believe it. Like, a lot of us were wondering, like, wait, okay, how's Robin going to look in this, though? And then when you finally see it in full glory, it's like, wow, no, he looks pretty badass.
Yeah.
In the green, red, and gold, as compared to just straight yellow, put it together. I thought that it worked.
It really did.
Yeah. No, I like the outfit and the full cape, everything. You know, instead of it just being the tights. I thought it worked very, very well. But anyway, so, okay, any other thoughts on the end battle? Otherwise, I have a couple.
Oh, go ahead. Say what you're going to say.
So here's the thing. The Batboat, awesome. The Batwing, awesome. The Batmobile, I like it. Like, I think it's awesome. All three vehicles get destroyed in this movie. Particularly, the Batwing and the Batboat last maybe a minute or two before they get destroyed by something the Riddler laid out. Very funny sequence where the Riddler and Two-Face are playing like Battleship, and, you know, they're using mines against the Batboat. I hate to say this. The entire reason that there was a different Batmobile, there was a different Batwing, and there was a different Batboat at all. And the reason, not only that there was a different one, but the reason they were destroyed was totally for marketing and for the toys. It was totally for merchandising. Like, that's what that was all about. And I really, like, looking back at it now, I hate that. I hate that so much. And that's why they destroyed them, because that way in the next movie, you can just make all new ones and you can sell the toys all over again. You know, and for them to be, like, for those really cool vehicles to only have a whopping 5 minutes of screen time is insulting, because it's so clearly they're just there. They're not there for the narrative. The narrative, there's no reason for them to even be on an island. Like, that, it doesn't, it works. It comes together, like you said, as a very epic ending battle. But it's just abundantly clear that all these things were either destroyed or were built or destroyed for the simple point of selling more toys in the next movie. And fuck, that just pisses me off. And it's not like they didn't make plenty of money from the movie. I mean, this is one of the biggest movies of its day. Yeah, really annoyed by that. But that's just me. I know that a lot of the things I really love were really just toy commercials. I accept that now. But it still pisses you off when you watch it again and you know that now and you go, oh, fuck. You know? So, anyway, that's my only real complaint with the end battle. I agree with you. I thought it was very epic. Probably the best battle sequence. It's at very least on par with Batman versus the Joker in the '89 Batman. I thought it was very well done and very exciting, and yeah, it works. It works. So that's all I have to say on that. But overall, I think this is a movie that I don't know why it's so hated today. There's no really good reason to hate it. Everything about it is very well done. There's nothing really out of place. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it does it well, in my opinion. And if it were maybe a little darker, I think a lot of people would be into it more. I get the complaints about Val Kilmer. Those make sense, you know? And, like, yeah, well, he's not as good as Michael Keaton. Like, I kind of understand that. So I know that that's why people may not like this. But then also today, I think most people think about Batman and they think about Christian Bale in the Christopher Nolan trilogy now. Like, I don't even think they care about these movies anymore. So I don't know why people can't just enjoy it for what they are. But anyway, out of 10, what would you give Batman Forever?
I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10.
Ooh, 7.5. Okay.
Yeah, slightly lower than previous Batman movies.
Okay.
I love the comedy. I love the action.
Yep.
Feel like the love story could have a little more to it.
Yeah.
I feel like the explanations, you know, there could be more of that. Which I understand there's like more expounding on certain details in other parts of the Batman mythology.
Yeah.
But you know, if it's going to be a movie where like people can just show up and watch the movie and get what they need to get out of it, you know, I'd expect a little bit more from this. And maybe there's more of that in the longer edition that you were talking about, the Red Book edition. Which, if we had seen that one, I might give it a little more. But
it's not that much better, but it is better. There are some critics who say that it saves the film, and it just turns it into a whole other animal. But that's just some critics. But keep going.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen more when, Bruce Wayne decides he doesn't want to be Batman anymore, and he, throughout the film, he's, pretty much constantly rejecting Robin, saying, no, I don't want you as my sidekick, I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I did, you're not going to be living for anything after you get revenge, then what? I just wish there'd been, a little more, deeper covering of that, but, overall, it was a pretty good film, and I enjoyed watching it. I thought it was comparable to the other two Batman movies.
Yeah.
Slightly different in feeling and quality, which I don't think that made it any worse. Honestly, I think it was still a great movie. But yeah, just, there's some things I wanted more of.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that makes sense. So 7.5 out of 10. I'm going to give it an 8, and I might even go 8.5.
Wow.
Because, well, the thing is I love the 66 Batman. That's my Batman that I most enjoy and like to identify with. But at the same time, I remember growing up that I was Adam West is awesome as Batman, but I gotta admit that these Batman movies, Batman looks so cool in those movies, And this was, for me, the hybrid of the 66 Batman with the stylings that Tim Burton kind of laid out. And because of that, I think it's fucking great. I like this one. I recognize how important and how groundbreaking the 89 Batman was, but the Batman movie I've watched the most, the two I've watched the most are this and Batman Begins, because I think those two movies are brilliant. You haven't seen Batman Begins yet, but we'll get to that. So, yeah, this does it for me on that level. I love the fact that it is very openly sexual, which the 66 Batman I thought was very sexy. As I grew up, I realized how sexy it was. It was nice to have Batman be really sexy again, and not in a darker way necessarily, like maybe Batman Returns was, but just in a very open, this is how it is, and I think it's funny. I still think, when Batman says, "Are you trying to get under my cape, Doctor?" That's one of the funniest lines. I love it, and because it's Batman being really witty. There's a lot to love in this film. And so I'll give it an 8.5. And again, it's because I think it is that perfect hybrid of the dark Batman with the bright Knight, or the Dark Knight with the bright Knight. And it works for me on that level. So yeah, I love this movie. And I love it more after watching a lot of the deleted scenes, but I loved it just as much without that. I still stand by everything I'm saying without those deleted scenes. So they don't really, I'm not saying anybody has to see those to appreciate this film. And I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did, Ellen. I thought it was, anyway, I remember when we were walking out of the theater, we're like, wow, that was fun.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the point. So it doesn't have to be this really dark, gritty film. It can just be fun. I really don't understand. People really seem to hate this movie, and they say it's because of the lighter tone and the comedy, and it's yeah, but you don't complain about the comedy in the Marvel movies. Anyway, whatever. People can be hypocrites, right? So that's just my opinion on it. But, so an enjoyable film. It was great to see this with you. I'm glad that they re-released this along with the other two films, because they really could have just released the first one and called it a day. Because I don't know how many people went to go see this one now. But, well, anyway, we have another one to review. And that's Batman and Robin, the end of this quadrilogy. Maybe we'll find out why it was the end of the quadrilogy. And, we'll talk about that. So, Ellen, thank you again for having dinner and a movie with me here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on and sharing some tea.
Yeah, right. Some some tea. Yeah.
Maybe next time we'll actually have dinner.
Yeah, maybe. All right, we'll see. Anyway, we'll wrap this one up. I'll see all of you on the other side.